Here on my Call to Awaken page, I get to share all my deep, dark, dirty secrets about my awakening journey and all the insanity about it. Um, yeah, so um, the story that I want to share coming up is how when I went through my awakening, um, it started to bring up all of my uh, deeply held but unconscious fears and perceived limitations and beliefs and all kinds of madness all at the same time. There was so much energy that was flowing through, and it was just triggering all my stuff in my subconscious, like Pandora's box opening up. And so the story I want to share is about initially after there was kind of a moment of awakening where I basically Shiva met Shakti, and I realized all of a sudden out of nowhere, oh, I'm not this body and this mind, and I just became one with everything. And it's kind of like the typical, kind of like the cliche enlightenment stuff that you hear about or whatever. But cliche stuff is oftentimes a real thing. So yeah, the Buddha under the enlightenment tree, and he surrenders and says, all right, I'm not gonna whatever. And then all of a sudden he gets the thing. It's just like manifestation, really. Release resistance, and there it is. You surrender. So that's kind of what it was. I was just kind of like, I don't really know, but I'm just going to meditate and see what the universe has to offer. If any of it's even whatever. But so I had that realization. And it wasn't just like a realization, like where you just kind of like realize it and then you kind of go back to your own existence or whatever. I think it happens differently for different people. For me, it was a complete instantaneous change of my entire existence, like in a flash. Because the world all of a sudden out of nowhere became like incredibly vibrant and blissful and energetic. It was like being like reborn in the middle of just like the waking state. I remember like my balance was perfect, my speech was perfect, my like energy was like crazy. It was like superhuman. I mean, for real. P.S. I've gone back to a very human state since then. Human state. But that was the real spiritual truth of it all, honestly. There's no psychedelic experience that anyone's ever had or could ever have that could match like what life became for those like couple weeks. It was like a couple weeks of like complete oneness, complete like synchronicities everywhere. Everyone like allowed me into their thing, even though I was all late or whatever. Like everything just kept working out magically. Very incredible. And everything was just so heightened and beautiful and magical and blah blah blah. Very exciting, I know. Well, it was until the opposite started to show up, and all the madness and all of the insanity that was temporarily removed started to come back and was illuminated through me, in the form of very, very intense energy sensations that were flowing up and down like crazy, and would respond to my thoughts that were going haywire. And of course, I always identified with all of it, thinking they were all my thoughts and blah, blah, blah. I was freaking out. I mean, there was like so much intense energy flowing, and it brought up basically, you know, this was when I was 28. This was in 2017. So it was like 28 years worth of trauma, of whatever, you know, subconscious programming, like all the deeply held familial stuff from childhood, you know, even like relationship breakup stuff, like other relationships, you know, all kinds of stuff, all coming up to the surface all at once. So naturally, yeah, if you, you know, it's like taking a powder keg and lighting it. Well, yeah, that's what you're gonna get. So there were a certain couple of thoughts though that came up, and I started learning about law of attraction. So that's kind of where it all ties in, is learning about law of attraction, how your thoughts create your reality, which of course is not like literally true, like you have a thought and that's going to be created. Like, no, it's like that can appear that way sometimes, like if you think of someone and they call you, you know, there's synchronicities and things that happen, but it's not like if you have a negative thought, that thought specifically is going to manifest. That's not really what it is. So I want to just be clear about that all the Abraham Hicks stuff and all the law of attraction stuff, it's more about like if you're in a negative spiraling state that causes your energy to go like that, that's when the universe will reflect negative experiences to you. And if if you keep going, then it's going to keep mirroring that back to you. Yeah, it's a mirror hologram, of course. But if you have a negative thought, you know, out of nowhere, or like it appears, then like, okay, whatever, it's a thought, right? Like it's like that thought's not going to hurt you. But I did not know that, and I misperceived it, and I didn't understand it, and I was also freaking out, and so I had a different experience about that. And it's really important to make that distinction, because I believed that I was going to create the negative circumstances that I was thinking about, or that I was fearful of. You know, like, oh, you're going to create your fears. That's also a misconception. Like, it's possible to create certain fears by focusing on them, but that's not what I'm talking about. I was talking about, like, I'll be more specific. The one that really got me, like really, like severely for a long time, was the thought that I had when I was teaching a guitar lesson through this experience, and I had the thought out of nowhere. I don't know where it came from. Just appeared in consciousness. I'm blind. And I heard from people that you should be very, very careful with what you follow with I am, because that will manifest. And of course, I misperceived what that really means. Like, yes, you don't want to identify with a thought or something, because that confirms that vibration to it confirms that you're not the divine, essentially. And it doesn't help your manifestations in general and your life. You know, if you believe something that's false about yourself, it doesn't help you. But I literally thought that I was going to create blindness for myself with that thought. And part of that was because I had all this energy, this Kundalini energy, crazy snake-like experience thing that I didn't quite understand or know how to handle, and it was all brand new, and I was feeling all this crazy stuff around me, and that's a whole thing in itself. But it caused me to freak out and essentially go crazy, because then I started having more thoughts about it and resisting them and saying, stop it, and I was terrified of my own mind. and I reached out to people for help, and of course, some of them like put my mind at ease, but some of them would trigger it and say, oh, you can't think negative, like you don't think negatively, blah blah blah, blah, that kind of stuff. They just didn't know how to help me. And those are the ones, of course, that my mind was focused on instead of the truth of the situation or like the helpful pieces. That's what the mind does. It goes to those places. It's like trying to get rid of essentially what you resist persists. So those thoughts kept coming up over and over and over and over and over again. And the energy sensations and the feelings and around them were so incredibly intense. It absolutely hindered my life. Like, I was terrified constantly. Like really freaking out. And this went on for quite a while, actually. Like, I was deeply suffering in fear that I was going to create a terrible reality for myself. Kind of for months, actually. And yeah, eventually I kept exploring teachings to figure out like what was going on. Like, I mean, obviously it didn't cause blindness, like those thoughts. I kept, whenever I've had those thoughts, I would feel this energy come down and even come sometimes like circle around my eyes. I thought it was gonna like kill me, or really really harm me. Of course, it didn't. It was just like floating energy sensations, which I still have to this day, by the way. It's this weird, crazy energy stuff that collects in the head, and now it gets into the body, all kinds of stuff. But it didn't actually like hurt me or harm me or anything physically. So eventually, I did all kinds of, explored all the teachings and all the stuff. Eventually, it got me in touch with back in touch with the non-dual aspect of it. Kind of that realization that, oh, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not the things that I have identified myself with. So I realized through that I could separate myself, the consciousness, and realize, oh, I didn't actually choose those thoughts, like, or the feelings that accompany them. Like, they arose. It was something that I didn't quite catch. Like, I was so identified with my mind when I had that thought, I'm blind, that I didn't even question it. Like, that's what we do, is we like have these thoughts, whatever they are, and we're just identified with them. But that's not really how it works. Like, we're not our thoughts. But sometimes we get caught in the stream of thinking. Like, the thought comes, and then you focus on it, and it creates more thoughts. Like, if you really pay attention, it's kind of an illusion. Like, that's why meditation is a very, very helpful practice, because it stops you from overthinking and getting identified and caught up in that stream. But really, it's a conditioned habit, like a program. So that's where I started. That was kind of the gift of it, is as I got more in contact with the self, the consciousness, the awareness, the observing element, I was able to detach kind of myself from all the things, all the stuff, the feelings, the uncomfortable sensations, the thoughts. And I realized that, oh, I didn't actually choose them anyway. So how could I be afraid of them, first of all? And how could I create something like that? Like, it would just happen. Like, I don't have any control over it. So I had to basically, what saved me eventually was that realization, and then the surrendering, the kind of like, okay, I don't have control over those thoughts. They're just going to come if they come. If they're going to make me go blind, I really don't have a choice in the matter. And that's when things started to ease up. Basically, I released resistance to the negative thing happening. Realizing that I didn't have control, and I never did anyway. It's funny how the ego likes to control situations and things for good reason, because it doesn't feel safe. So while it's valid, it's also not an objective aspect of reality. So that's my story for regarding how I was terrified of my own mind, and that was something I had trouble talking about. I still have a little bit of triggering energy when I discuss the blindness thing, because that was really something. But I also illuminated all kinds of different fears within myself. So what happened, that was the other part of it, is once I detached and became the observer, I was also able to explore what those thoughts and sensations and things meant to my psyche, and what fears did they illuminate. Maybe like fears that I wouldn't be able to take care of myself if I were to go blind, that I would need, something external to take care of me. It was also kind of symbolic. It was kind of like spiritual blindness, because for so long I was really living in the Maya. I had no idea anything spiritually related. So there was kind of like a choosing to be blindness, to be spiritually blind and not see the reality of things. And why is that? So I got to explore why that was. Well, if I was that powerful, then I'd realize that I had created some unwanted circumstances for myself, and what would that mean? That would bring all kinds of issues, shame and disgust, and I'd have to face the disappointment and frustrations with all of that. There's all kinds of gifts that came with that exploration. Sometimes the things we think are bad, it's a big part of it, is they're not really bad necessarily. In fact, in many ways, they're just messages and gifts, because they're teaching you something. There's all positive and negative is kind of like a human construct. The negative things, the things that we hate the most, are often there for us, teaching us something. We think like anger is bad. We think, sadness is bad, or whatever, or like dark, denser emotions are bad. They're not bad. They're appearing, and they're part of us for a reason. Like, we have them because we need to have, in this human experience, we need to be able to draw boundaries. When somebody crosses them, anger is a valid response. And sometimes, so that's like the healthy anger. And also, anger, if it's repressed, we don't want to have that in our system. So if it comes up, it's a good thing, because we want to cleanse our system of unwanted or buried emotions or energies anyway. So if that's covering up our true essence, then we want to become aware, essentially, of all that lives within us, not seeing things as purely good or bad, where you push them away or judge or resist them or deny them. So that's where I started to integrate my shadow and become whole and see, the different parts of the two halves of the yin yang as integrated rather than like arguing with each other. And that had become like a very incredible and interesting process that I started to dive deep into, is to integrate that shadow into wholeness. So there you have it, my blindness story. All right, well, please feel free to reach out if you'd like to work together one-on-one. I love to help guide people through their awakening processes, and have lots of fun stories and resources to share as well. Much love. You can also follow me for musical content at Scotty Bramer on Instagram, or Scotty Bramer Music on YouTube. Yeah, much love. Peace.